Welcome to Crisis in Perception. We're all about digging into the systems that shape our world. And today, we're doing a really focused, system-level breakdown. Think of this as the condensed version of our full deep dive.
So, we're diving into this awesome guide on critical thinking. But here's the twist. We're not treating it like a list of tips and tricks. No, we're going to treat it like a blueprint for a system of judgment that you can use over and over. And our job, it's to take that blueprint apart and see how it works. And I really want to be clear about this. This isn't a book summary, and I'm definitely not here to give you advice. What we are here to do is something a bit different. We're going to analyze the deep structure of thinking itself, the nuts and bolts.
All right, here's our game plan. First, we're going to lay out the system for judgment itself. Then, we'll get into what makes it tick, the quality control line. We'll look at the predictable outcomes when it works well, and, of course, why bad ideas still manage to stick around. And we'll wrap up by connecting all these thinking systems together. Sound good? Let's go.
All right, Section 1, a system for judgment. Let's start deconstructing this whole thing. See, at the very heart of how we make sense of the world, there's this fundamental system. You can think of it as a constant learning and judgment loop.
And this loop, it's really just 4 straightforward, repeatable steps. First, you observe something. You see what's happening. Next, you try to interpret it to make sense of it. Then, and this is key, you test that interpretation. Does it actually hold up? Finally, you revise your whole understanding based on what you found out. So it's observe, interpret, test, revise, over and over.
Okay, so how do we actually power this loop? Well, this is where it gets really cool. A structured reflective cycle is basically the engine. It's all about asking the right questions. What actually happened? That's your observation. So what? What does this mean? That's your interpretation. Now what? What am I going to do differently next time? And there's your testing and revising. It's how we consciously turn messy, raw experience into solid understanding.
Okay, next up, the quality control line. So we've got this neat little system, but how does it actually hold up in the real world, with all its pressures and demands? What are the incentives that are constantly shaping our thoughts?
The best way to get a handle on these forces is with a metaphor. I want you to picture this. Think of your critical thinking process as a quality control line inside your head, like in a factory. And every idea, every belief, every conclusion, it has to pass down this line and get inspected before it gets shipped out as a decision or an action. But here's the million-dollar question. How strict is that quality control? Well, it all comes down to incentives. For example, when you're under time pressure, you're just going to shove ideas through without really checking them. And identity? Oh man, that's a big one. It's like the inspector is biased and just wants to approve the ideas that make them feel good. But then you have things like institutions, think science or the legal system, that actually reward you for slowing down and having well-documented claims. And reflection? That's like sending your inspector to training. It makes the whole process better over time.
All right, Section 3, predictable thinking outcomes. So, let's imagine the system is working perfectly. The quality control line is running smoothly, the incentives are all pointing towards careful thought. What happens then? Well, you get some pretty predictable and really high-quality results.
The first big payoff is just crystal clear reasoning. You start to see the skeleton of an argument. You get way better at looking at the evidence and asking, is this actually any good?
Second, you develop this amazing ability for self-correction. And it's more accurate, too. Remember, this whole thing is a loop. It's designed to catch its own mistakes and fix them. So a really well-run system isn't about being right all the time. It's about getting better at being right over time.
And the third big outcome? Your conclusions become way less reactive and a lot more deliberate. You stop jumping at the first answer that feels good. This whole process, it adds a little bit of friction in a good way. It slows you down just enough to arrive at a judgment that's more thoughtful and stable.
Okay, so far so good. But this brings up a huge question, right? If this system is so great, why is the world still flooded with bad ideas and terrible arguments? What's going wrong?
Well, the short answer is that the system is always fighting an uphill battle. It's up against some really powerful counter-incentives. That quality control line we talked about, it is under constant threat of being completely overwhelmed or just bypassed altogether. There are 3 big culprits here. First, just the sheer volume of information, what we call cognitive load. Our little quality control line just gets buried. It can't keep up. Second, you've got those identity incentives again. Let's be honest, it often feels way better to fit in with your tribe than to be rigorously accurate. And third, well, social media and our digital world. These platforms tend to reward hot takes and absolute certainty, not careful thought and nuance. So they end up being a megaphone for the weakest ideas.
And here's the bottom line, the crucial point of all this. When you combine all these pressures, you get what we call a crisis in perception. It's a situation where we start to mistake fast, simple, emotionally satisfying answers for real, hard-won understanding. Essentially, the feeling of being right starts to feel more important than the actual process of getting it right. Okay, for our last section, let's pull the camera way back. We've been focused on the individual thinking system, right? Now let's see how that one little system plugs into the huge, complex systems that make up our society.
Because the quality of our individual thinking doesn't just stay in our heads. Oh no, it has massive downstream effects. It affects everything. Our ability to navigate the media, to make smart decisions at work, how we evaluate students in our schools, and even the health of our entire democracy. Every single one of these giant systems is only as strong as the individual thinking systems that make it up.
And that right there is the big takeaway. Thinking isn't just some abstract personal skill you have. No, it's a system with inputs, outputs, and processes. And it's a system that operates inside of and shapes even bigger systems all around us. And you know what? Really understanding that structure, that's the absolute first step if we ever hope to make it better. Crisis in Perception examines how systems shape belief and how better tools help us see clearly. This project is free and publicly accessible. If you'd like to support the time, tools, and research behind Crisis in Perception, you can become a supporter on Patreon. For a longer audio-based analysis of this topic, see the deep dive linked in the description. If you enjoy this kind of systems-level analysis, please like, subscribe, and comment with books or topics you'd like us to explore next.